have you ever looked at a massive fictional universe, something with decades and decades of lore, and just thought, where do I even begin?
Oh, absolutely. It can feel overwhelming, like trying to jump into a conversation that's been going on for years.
Exactly. Well, today, we're doing just that. We're diving headfirst, really plunging into one of the most expansive and, frankly, intricate tapestries in modern fiction. The Mobile Suit Gundam franchise.
It's a giant, isn't it? Since 1979, I mean, Gundam's been way more than just cool giant robots fighting.
Way more. It's this whole saga of gritty war stories, but also really profound philosophical questions. It's just a massive cultural phenomenon.
And what's truly remarkable about Gundam, I think, is that it isn't simply a collection of flashy robot fights, though it has those too.
Oh, definitely.
But at its core, it's often a deep, sometimes pretty challenging exploration of humanity's future out there in space. It grapples with these really universal themes, you know, the nature of war, the complexities of politics, the very idea of human evolution, and, well, the deep-seated prejudices that seem to follow us no matter where we go.
It's a constant thread, isn't it? Prejudice.
It really is. So our mission in this deep dive basically is to give you a bit of a shortcut, a distilled understanding of this incredible multiverse.
Help make sense of it all.
Exactly. Help you make sense of its many timelines and maybe understand what makes its whole approach to canon so wonderfully unique, even a bit fluid.
That's a perfect way to put it, because you might have heard of Gundam Wing. That was huge in the West.
Hugely influential, yeah.
Or maybe even watching a recent hit like The Witch from Mercury. Absolutely brilliant series.
Phenomenal.
But the big question for so many people is, how do these different stories connect? Or do they even need to connect?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
So we'll be your guides through this incredibly rich history. We're going to be carefully extracting the most important nuggets of knowledge from all the sources you shared with us.
Trying to synthesize it all.
Exactly. So buckle up. Get ready to unpack some seriously fascinating material. Okay, so you think about starting this journey into Gundam. Where's the logical first step? Everyone says, if you really want to get Gundam,
You got to start with the universal century.
you have to start with the Universal
Yeah.
Century. What makes that timeline so foundational? Why is it the bedrock?
Well, that's absolutely right. The universal century, or UC, as everyone calls it, it's the original. And for many, it is the principal timeline of the whole Gundam franchise.
The OG.
The absolute OG. It kicked off with the very first Mobile Suit Gundam series way back in 1979. And from that moment, it just became the undisputed backbone.
Right.
The UC is where the core lore was really hammered out. It's where those recurring themes, like the big one, the conflict between Earth dwellers and the Spacenoids.
Spacenoids, the humans living out in the colonies?
Exactly. Humans who migrated to live in these vast orbital space colonies, that central conflict was first introduced there. And critically, it's also where the concept of Newtypes emerged.
Ah, Newtypes. That's different.
Super key. These are humans who are, well, theorized to have evolved, developing enhanced spatial awareness, intuition, maybe even psychic abilities because they adapted to life in space.
A sort of next step in human evolution.
Kind of, yeah. The timeline itself is anchored in the year UC0001. That date marks humanity's really ambitious shift into living in space permanently.
Whole new calendar.
Whole new calendar, signifying a new era. And from that pivotal year, the UC chronicles, over 2 centuries of almost continuous conflict, incredible technological evolution, obviously, the mobile suits, and just massive social upheaval. All of it stemming from that growing divide between Earth and its spacefaring descendants.
Wow, 2 centuries.
Yeah, it is without a doubt the most densely populated narrative space within the franchise. It offers this really cohesive, long-form history that builds series upon series, OVA upon OVA, side story upon side story. It creates this truly epic saga.
So the Universal Century is this grand narrative, the sort of mothership of Gundam stories, the main trunk of the tree.
That's a great way to think of it, yeah.
But that wasn't the end of it, was it? Because then, in the mid-1990s, the franchise took this really bold step. It started branching out in pretty unexpected ways. What was behind that? Why start new universes?
Well, it was a very deliberate move. It wasn't accidental. It was really driven by a desire to both revitalize the franchise and, importantly, broaden its appeal.
Bring in new fans.
Exactly. The concept of alternate universes, or AUS, was intentionally introduced in the mid-90s. It actually started with Mobile Fighter G Gundam in '94, which was quite different.
Oh yeah, G Gundam was definitely different. Martial arts tournament with Gundams.
Totally different vibe. But the primary goal behind G Gundam and the AUS that followed was to create new entry points. Imagine, by the mid-90s, you've got 15 years of UC continuity, trying to jump into that cold. It's incredibly daunting for a newcomer.
Yeah, that's a lot of homework.
Right. So AUS allowed new audiences to experience Gundam, get the core feel, without needing extensive prior knowledge. It refreshed the brand for a whole new generation.
Makes sense.
And crucially, each AU is a completely standalone narrative. It operates with its own distinct timeline, its own calendar system like After Colony or Cosmic Era, and unique world building. This freedom from UC continuity gave the creators immense room to experiment.
But they still feel like Gundam.
They do, and this is key. They consistently draw thematic and aesthetic inspiration from the UC. So you'll definitely see echoes of Earth versus space colony conflicts or the emergence of extraordinary pilots, maybe themes of prejudice, but they're all reinterpreted through a fresh lens.
Okay, can you give some examples?
Sure, so you take the Cosmic Era CE of Gundam Seed, that really shifts the focus onto the ethical dilemmas of genetic engineering, the naturals versus the coordinators.
Right, the genetic divide.
Then you have the After Colony AC era of Gundam Wing. That portrays a much more overtly political guerrilla war, almost a spy thriller feel at times.
With the 5 iconic pilots.
Exactly. And maybe most uniquely, there's the Anno Domini AD timeline of Gundam 00. That one's actually set in a future version of our own Gregorian calendar, directly connecting its fictional world, its conflicts over energy, to our present reality.
That's fascinating. Keeping the core essence but remixing it for different audiences and exploring different angles. It's smart.
It kept the franchise alive and relevant.
But it does bring up an important point.
Yeah.
If you've got the huge UC timeline and all these separate AUs, and as you mentioned, even different versions or retellings within the UC, what actually counts as canon in Gundam? It feels, well, less rigid than what many Western franchises seem to follow.
That's a really crucial observation. And yeah, it highlights a fundamental difference in storytelling philosophy, I think.
How so?
Well, while many Western franchises, Star Wars, Star Trek, they often operate on a very rigid, sometimes fiercely debated, hierarchical model of canonicity. What's real, what's legend, what's canon.
Right, the tiers of canon.
Exactly. Japanese media, and Gundam specifically, tends to embrace a much more fluid and, frankly, inclusive approach. It's less about absolute declarations.
Okay, so what's the general rule then, if there is one?
The general principle, coming from Sunrise, the studio behind Gundam, is that the animated works, the TV series, the OVAs, the movies, often referred to informally as white works, hold the highest official status.
So animation is king.
Animation is king. Now, non-animated media, things like manga, novels, sometimes called black or semi-official works, they're still official products, but there's a hierarchy of precedence. If a story only exists in manga or novel form, it's generally considered official until an animated adaptation comes along. Once that adaptation is produced, the animated version becomes the primary, definitive official account. And any discrepancies between the animation and the source manga or novel are usually resolved in favor of the animation.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, a perfect example is Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn. It started as a very popular series of novels, but then it was adapted into a multi-part OVA series, which was later recut into a TV series.
Right, I remember the OVAs.
So now, the animated version of Unicorn is considered the definitive version of those events in the UC timeline. The novels are still great, they offer more detail, but the OVA is the primary canon.
Got it. But what about those contradictions you mentioned earlier, like different animated versions of the same events?
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting and maybe counterintuitive for some. This fluid philosophy allows for multiple, sometimes seemingly contradictory, official accounts of the same events to coexist peacefully.
Like the original series versus the origin.
Exactly. You take the original 1979 Mobile Suit Gundam anime, foundational. Then you have the 2015 OVA series Mobile Suit Gundam, The Origin. It's explicitly a retelling, a prequel in parts, focusing heavily on Char's backstory.
And it changes things, really.
It makes significant alterations. A huge one is that in The Origin, the Earth Federation already possesses its own mobile suits before the one-year war begins. That directly contradicts the original series premise, where Zeon's initial mobile suit supremacy was a massive strategic factor.
Which is true.
That's the neat part. Both are considered official, animated works by Sunrise. It's not seen as a flaw or an error that needs to be retconned or fixed.
It's a choice.
It's a deliberate storytelling choice. It prioritizes compelling narratives and fresh perspectives over strict, unyielding continuity. Think of it less like one definitive history book that must be perfectly consistent.
And more like,
More like having multiple, equally valid historical accounts written by different historians. Each has its own focus, its own interpretation, maybe uncovering different details. Reading both gives you a richer, more nuanced understanding of the event, rather than just trying to establish a single, absolute truth.
so what does this all mean for you, the viewer, trying to make sense of it all? Does it matter which one you watch first?
For the viewer, it means you have incredible freedom. You can dive into different versions of the same events, maybe the original series first, then the origin, and know that they are both legitimate, official ways to experience the story.
It's not about replacing the old one.
Not at all. It's about offering different facets, different perspectives. It's like looking at a historical event through different lenses. Each provides valuable insight.
It actually encourages you to think more critically about the story, doesn't it? Comparing the differences.
Precisely. It encourages critical thinking and a deeper appreciation for multiple viewpoints within this shared universe, rather than just passively accepting a single monolithic narrative. It's quite sophisticated, really.
Okay, let's really zoom back in now on that foundational universal century. We know it's the backbone. But how did humanity even get to that point? To a point where these massive, devastating wars between Earth and space colonies became not just possible, but, well, seemingly inevitable. It's a journey that actually starts way back in our own calendar.
It does, yeah. The roots of the universal century are firmly planted in the mid-20th and early 21st centuries of our own Anno Domini, our AD calendar.
Our history.
Our history extrapolated. If you think about it, we took those first tentative steps into space with Sputnik, then Apollo 11, landmark moments. But as humanity continued to expand on Earth, our world faced these escalating global crises, things we worry about today. Widespread resource depletion, serious environmental degradation, and localized wars that constantly threaten to boil over and engulf the entire planet. Sound familiar?
Depressingly familiar.
Yeah. So, according to the UC backstory, to try and counter this profound instability, the world's nations eventually unified. They formed the Earth Federation government in AD 1999.
A unified Earth government.
Be unified, at least on paper.
Yeah.
And facing a terrestrial population that had swelled to over 9 billion people, the Federation made this absolutely momentous announcement. A massive human space settlement program was launched.
Building colonies.
Building the first generation of colonies. Construction of the very first O'Neill-type space colony, those giant rotating cylinders, began in AD 2045. And upon its completion, a symbolic moment, the calendar was officially changed. The beginning of humanity's new life among the stars was designated Universal Century Year 0001.
UC0001, the dawn of a new age, supposedly. So this must have been a period of immense hope initially, right? Moving out into space.
You'd think so, and maybe for some, it was. Over the following decades, literally billions of people emigrated, not just to a few scattered stations, but to these massive colony clusters called sides, located at stable Earth-Moon Lagrange points.
Side 1, Side 2, Side 3.
Exactly. And by UC0000, an astonishing statistic, 9 out of humanity's 11 billion total population lived in space. 9 billion people.
Wow, that's a huge shift. But it didn't solve everything.
It absolutely didn't. This mass migration didn't magically fix humanity's underlying problems. It kind of just displaced them into a new cosmic environment. The Earth Federation, now firmly established, began to govern these colonies with an increasingly heavy and many felt unfair hand.
How so?
Exploiting their resources, taxing them heavily, but not giving them equal political representation. Treating the inhabitants, the spacenoids, essentially as second-class citizens.
Classic colonial dynamics, just in space.
Pretty much, and this naturally fostered deep-seated resentment among the spacenoids. It gave rise to new political philosophies advocating for their rights. The most influential was something called Kantalism.
Kantalism. Who was behind that?
It was championed by a philosopher and politician named Zeon Kun, based in Colony Cluster Side 3.
Ah, Zeon, the name itself.
The name itself, yes. Kantalism argued a few key things. First, that humanity had a sort of sacred duty to emigrate to space to allow the overburdened Earth to heal. Second, that spacenoids living in this new environment were evolving into new types of humans.
The Newtypes again.
Implicitly, yes. And that these new humans deserved self-determination, independence from Earth's control. So, in UC0058, Daikun formally declared Side 3's independence, establishing the Republic of Zeon.
So a noble ideal, initially independence, self-determination. But things didn't stay peaceful, did they? What happened next to really escalate these tensions towards war?
No, this peaceful movement for independence was tragically cut short. In UC-0068, Zeon Zum Daikun died very suddenly under extremely mysterious circumstances.
Assassinated.
Widely believed to be an assassination, yeah. And suspicion immediately fell upon his powerful political rival, Daegwin Soto-Zabi.
The Zabi family, another key name.
Absolutely central to the conflict. The Zabi family swiftly seized control of Side 3 after Daikon's death. They systematically purged Daikon's loyalists and, by UC-0069, had transformed his republic into the militaristic, autocratic Principality of Zeon.
From republic to principality, a big shift.
A huge shift towards authoritarianism and military expansion. And what happened to Daikon's children?
Right, Casval and Artesia.
His orphan children, Casval and Artesia, were smuggled off Side 3 to Earth for their safety. Casval, burning with a desire for revenge against the Zabis for his father's death, eventually returned to the Zeon military under a new identity.
Char Aznable.
The now infamous alias, Char Aznable. His quest for revenge becomes a major thread throughout the UC saga.
And technologically, something big happened around this time too, didn't it?
Yeah.
Something that gave Zeon an edge.
A massive breakthrough, yes. The Zabis' ambitions, and indeed the Principality's ability to even consider challenging the might of the Earth Federation, were significantly bolstered by a revolutionary technological discovery, the Minovsky particle, discovered back in UC 0065.
Minovsky physics, the pseudoscience magic of Gundam.
Pretty much, but it has defined rules within the universe. This subatomic particle, when dispersed in large quantities, has incredible effects. It jams radar, disrupts long-range communications, messes with precision-guided weapons. Basically, it renders conventional 21st century warfare tactics almost obsolete.
Making close quarters combat viable again.
Exactly. And crucially, it also enabled the development of compact, high-output fusion reactors and powerful beam weaponry like beam rifles and beam sabers.
The iconic weapons.
Iconic. This whole new field of Minovsky physics led directly to the creation of an entirely new type of weapon system designed specifically for this particle-rich environment. The giant humanoid fighting vehicle known as the Mobile Suit.
And Zeon got them first.
Zeon got them first and perfected them first. Their early models, like the MSO-5 Zaku first and especially the legendary MSO-6 Zaku second, gave the comparatively small Principality of Zeon a decisive military advantage over the Earth Federation's huge but technologically outdated space fleets and ground forces.
So, connecting this all back, you see how humanity basically exported its worst problems, resource scarcity, political oppression, class divides directly into space. They just replicated the conditions for conflict on a cosmic scale.
It's a profound cautionary tale baked right into the foundation. We took our baggage with us. It set the stage perfectly for the inevitable explosion.
And that explosion came in UC-0079 with the infamous One-Year War. This conflict is truly the cornerstone, isn't it? Everything seems to revolve around or react to the One-Year War.
Absolutely. It is the defining event of the early universal century, and its shadow looms large over everything that follows. This period is also the most densely chronicled in the UC, with the original series, OVAs, manga, games, all depicting different facets of this massive conflict. It really showcases how much detail and how many differing perspectives can be woven into a single year-long historical event.
So walk us through the major beats of the war. How did it start?
Okay, so on January 3rd, UC 0079, the Principality of Zeon declared war on the Earth Federation. And they didn't hold back. The war began immediately with the horrifying one-week war.
Just 1 week.
1 week of absolute devastation. Zeon forces launched surprise attacks, and critically, they used weapons of mass destruction, nuclear, biological, chemical weapons against Federation-controlled sides 1, 2, and 4, causing billions of civilian deaths almost instantly.
Billions. Just staggering.
Staggering brutality. They then initiated something called Operation British. This was an attempt to drop an evacuated but still intact colony cylinder from Side 2 directly onto the Federation's military headquarters at Jaburo, deep in South America.
Using a colony as a weapon.
As a kinetic weapon, yes. Federation forces desperately managed to break it apart, diverting the main mass, but a large fragment still crashed down, hitting Sydney, Australia, and causing catastrophic environmental damage.
So Zeon had the early momentum.
Decisively. Weeks later, the Battle of Loom took place. This was a massive fleet engagement where Zeon's mobile suit forces, led by aces like the Black Tri-Stars and, of course, Char Aznable, absolutely decimated the Federation's conventional space fleet. It was a shocking defeat for the Federation.
What happened after Luma?
The scale of the early destruction led both sides to negotiate the Antarctic Treaty. This banned the use of WMDs, nuclear weapons, and colony drops, basically setting the rules for the rest of the war, making it a conventional, albeit incredibly brutal, mobile suit-focused conflict. But it also paved the way for Zeon to launch large-scale Earth drop operations.
Invading Earth itself.
Invading Earth, seizing key resource areas, mining complexes, strategic locations. This sparked a really prolonged grinding ground war across the planet, leading to a stalemate for many months. You see glimpses of this harsh reality in OVAs like MSIGLO-2, The Gravity Front, showing Federation soldiers struggling against Zaku's on the ground.
So when did things start to turn around for the Federation? How did they counter the mobile suit threat?
The tide really began to turn around September. This was thanks to the Federation's top-secret weapons development program, codenamed Operation V. Hidden away at the neutral colony Site 7, they were secretly developing their own mobile suits.
A Gundam.
The Gundam. Specifically, the prototype RX-78-2 Gundam. During a Zeon reconnaissance mission that stumbled upon Site 7, a desperate battle broke out. In the chaos, a 15-year-old civilian mechanic, a boy named Amuro Ray.
That's a kid.
Just a kid, yeah. He stumbles into the Gundam's cockpit. It turns out he has latent Newtype abilities, which nobody really understood yet. He manages to activate the Gundam and defend the colony. He, along with a ragtag crew of mostly civilian refugees and rookie soldiers aboard the carrier White Base, are forced to flee and essentially become this legendary independent fighting unit constantly pursued by Char Aznable. Their story is the core narrative of the original Mobile Suit Gundam series.
It's incredible how many other stories are unfolding at the same time during this 1 year. It really makes it feel like a vast, living, breathing conflict, not just focused on Amuro and the White Base.
It absolutely does, and that's one of the strengths of the UC. While Amuro and the White Base were central, numerous concurrent campaigns and side stories massively enrich our understanding of the war's sheer scale and complexity.
Like what else was going on?
Well, beyond the main narrative, you have series like Mobile Suit Gundam, the 08th MS team, that gives you this really gritty, ground-level view of a Federation mobile suit squad fighting a protracted jungle war in Southeast Asia. Very different feel from the spot battles.
More like a Vietnam War movie almost.
Very much that kind of vibe, yeah. Then you have things like the MSIGLO OVAs, which focus on Zeon's side, specifically a quirky experimental weapons development unit showing their desperation and ingenuity. There are video games adapted into manga like Gundam Side Story 00079, Rise from the Ashes following the Federation's White Dingo Squad fighting in Australia, or a Zeonic Front focusing on Zeon's elite Midnight Fenrir Corps.
So many angles.
So many angles. Stories like Mobile Suit Gundam Side Story, The Blue Destiny introduce concepts like the exam system, an attempt to weaponize Newtype abilities through AI, and the upcoming Gundam. Requiem for Vengeance is set to explore the European front from the Zeon perspective. It just paints this incredibly detailed picture.
What were the major turning points that led to the end of the war?
Key turning points came later in the year. Operation Odessa in November was a massive Federation offensive that successfully retook a vital mining complex in Ukraine, forcing Zeon to begin a strategic withdrawal from Earth.
A major setback for Zeon.
Huge. Then, in December, you have the Battle of Solomon, where the Federation assaulted one of Zeon's main asteroid fortresses. And interwoven with these big battles are more personal stories, like the poignant OVA Mobile Suit Gundam 0080, War in the Pocket, which shows the war's impact through the eyes of a child living in a neutral colony. Very powerful.
The final battle.
The final battle took place on December 31st, New Year's Eve, UC 0079. It was fought at a Baoakwa, Zeon's last major defensive fortress. It was this chaotic, incredibly brutal engagement. It saw the deaths of most of the Zabi family leadership.
Shaguen, Giran, Caecilia.
All meeting violent ends, yeah. And it culminated famously in the final climactic duel between Amuro Ray and the Gundam and Char Aznable, now piloting the powerful mobile armor, the Zeong.
Did they finish each other?
Surprisingly, no. Both rivals survived the duel, though the Gundam itself was destroyed. But Zeon's forces were routed, their leadership gone. On January 1st, UC 0080, what remained of the Principality, now reverted to the Republic of Zeon, signed a formal treaty of surrender, officially ending the one-year war.
Wow. What a year.
An absolutely transformative, devastating year for humanity.
And you mentioned earlier that even this core event, the One-Year War, has different interpretations within Gundam itself. How does that fit in?
Right. That's where the concept of alternate universal century, or AUC, works comes in. These are official animated productions, but they exist as parallel narratives, offering different takes on the established UC history, often with significant variations.
Like the origin.
Like Mobile Suit Gundam, the origin, which we touched on, it retells the lead-up and the war itself, but with a much heavier focus on political intrigue, Char's complex backstory, and crucially, that change about the Federation having mobile suits pre-war. It alters the technological power balance significantly compared to the 79 series.
And the other one you mentioned, Thunderbolt.
Right. Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt is another key AUC example, set during the One-Year War, but in a specific debris-filled sector called the Thunderbolt Sector. It's much darker, way more mature in tone, famous for its free jazz soundtrack.
Jazz, okay.
Yeah, it creates this unique, chaotic atmosphere. It features hyper-advanced, almost experimental technology for the time period, like Zeon's Psycho Zaku, which is piloted by a quadruple amputee directly through a neural interface. Yeah. And the morality is incredibly ambiguous. Both the Federation and Zeon pilots are pushed to extremes. The tech, the tone, the character focus, it places Thunderbolt firmly outside the direct continuity of the original 1979 series, existing as its own powerful interpretation of the war. It shows how flexible the UC framework can be.
So the war ends, Zeon surrenders. You'd really think after such a devastating conflict, maybe, just maybe, peace would reign for a while, right?
You'd hope so. Logically, you'd expect a period of rebuilding, reconciliation.
But the universal century shows us, again and again, that the end of one conflict often just plants seeds for the next one. The Federation's victory was clearly incomplete somehow.
It truly was. Militarily, the Federation won. But they fundamentally failed to resolve the deep-seated ideological tensions, the Earthnoid versus Spacenoid resentment, the questions of autonomy that actually caused the war in the first place.
So the root causes were still there.
Still simmering beneath the surface. Plus, zealous remnants of the Zeon military refused to accept surrender. They scattered throughout the solar system, hiding, regrouping, blotting. This fragile peace was indeed just a prelude to more violence.
And that came just a few years later.
Just 3 years after the war's official end. In UC 00083, a large, well-organized Zeon remnant fleet led by Admiral Agail Delaz launched a complex and audacious plot called Operation Stardust. This is all detailed in the OVA series, Mobile Suit Gundam 0083, Stardust Memory.
Stardust Memory. Okay, what was their plan?
It was multi-phased and incredibly bold. The operation began dramatically when a top Zeon ace pilot, Aznable, infiltrated a Federation base in Australia and successfully stole one of 2 new prototype Gundams, the GPO-2 Physalis.
Stealing a Gundam. Not good.
Especially this Gundam.
Yeah.
The GPO-2 was specifically designed to launch tactical nuclear warheads, violating the spirit, if not the letter, of the Antarctic Treaty.
Oh, wow.
So the Federation's test carrier, the Albion, with rookie pilot Ku Uraki piloting the other prototype, the GP-01, was tasked with pursuing Gato and recovering the stolen Nuke Gundam. It's this desperate chase across Earth and into space.
Did they catch him?
Ultimately, no. Despite a relentless pursuit and several clashes, Gato achieved the first devastating phase of his mission. He arrived at a massive Federation fleet gathering at the asteroid base Conte Island for a naval review.
A show of force.
Exactly. And Gato used the GPO-2's nuclear bazooka to annihilate a huge portion of the assembled fleet. It was a catastrophic blow.
But that wasn't the main goal, was it?
No, that was just phase 1. The true objective of Operation Stardust was then revealed. The Delaz fleet simultaneously hijacked 2 massive space colonies that were being moved for reconstruction. They managed to set one of them on a collision course with Earth.
Another colony drop. After the treaty.
Another colony drop attempt. Despite the Federation's desperate efforts to stop it, the colony impacted Earth, hitting North America, specifically targeting the continent's primary grain-producing regions, causing immense devastation and projecting long-term famine.
Just horrific. What was the fallout from this?
Operation Stardust was an absolute catastrophe for the Earth Federation. Militarily, politically, intelligence-wise, a complete failure on every level. The success of the Delas fleet, combined with the Federation's utter inability to stop the colony drop, created this pervasive atmosphere of fear, paranoia, and deep insecurity within the Federation government and military leadership.
How did they react?
The institutional response was not one of, say, reform or trying to understand why Zeon remnants were still so motivated or reaching out to the Space Noids. Instead, it was pure reactionary authoritarianism. Hardliners within the Federation leadership successfully argued that a new, elite, politically motivated force was desperately needed. A force to suppress any and all anti-Federation movements, especially among Space Noids, with absolute authority and prejudice. Yeah, this argument prevailed, and in late UC 0083, the Earth Federation established the Titans.
The Titans.
Infamous.
Infamous is right. An elite counterinsurgency task force granted unprecedented operational autonomy and political power. They answered to only a few hardliners at the very top.
And who were they made up of?
Critically, they were comprised largely of Earthborn supremacists, individuals who deeply distrusted and looked down upon all space noids, viewing them as inherently suspect. The Titans quickly became a brutal, oppressive force, using intimidation, excessive violence, and political persecution against anyone deemed a threat, particularly targeting space noid civilians and politicians advocating for greater autonomy.
So, the insight here is just startling, isn't it? In trying to prevent another Zeon uprising, the Federation essentially created this internal threat, this oppressive force, arguably far more dangerous and insidious than the external enemy they just fought. They literally built the very monster they claimed to fear right within their own ranks. That's a profound and accurate takeaway. The creation of the Titans marks this absolutely critical, dark turning point in the post-one-year war era. It's the Federation doubling down on oppression instead of seeking understanding.
Was there more detail shown about their rise?
Yeah, there's a manga and novel series called Advance of Zeta, The Flag of Titans. It provides a really detailed look into the Titans' activities during their formative years, specifically following a unit called the T3, the Titans Test Team.
What do they do?
They were tasked with developing and evaluating advanced new mobile suits, like the Gundam TR-1 Hazel. But the story vividly showcases not just their tech development, but their ruthless operational doctrine, their mindset. It foreshadows the truly oppressive tactics they would soon employ on a massive scale across the Earth's sphere.
Like what kind of tactic?
We're talking brutal crackdowns on civilian protests, political assassinations, and eventually, horrifically, gassing entire colonies suspected of harboring anti-Federation sentiment, like the infamous 30 Bunch incident. These actions, carried out with impunity, served only to radicalize a whole new generation of space noids and alienate many.
And this leads to another war.
Yes. The events of the landmark TV series Mobile Suit Gundam chronicle the resulting civil war, aptly named the Grips conflict, after the Titans' main headquarters asteroid base.
And who was leading the AEUG fight?
Well, their top ace pilot, operating under an alias, was none other than Quattro Bagina,
Which was really
Char Aznable, returned from his self-imposed exile, now seemingly fighting against tyranny and seeking to reform the Federation from within. A complex shift for him.
definitely complex. And who was the protagonist?
The conflict escalates dramatically and the focus shifts when a gifted but very volatile young Newtype civilian named Camille Biden, who harbors a deep personal grudge against the Titans, literally stumbles into the cockpit of a stolen prototype Gundam MKG. He joins the AEUG and eventually becomes the pilot of their transformable flagship mobile suit, the iconic MSC-006 Zeta Gundam.
So it's AEUG versus the Titans.
Not quite that simple. The Grips conflict quickly spiraled into a brutal three-way war because a third major power emerges from the fringes of the solar system, Axis Zeon.
Axis Zeon. More Zeon remnants.
The largest and most organized group of Zeon remnants who had retreated to the asteroid base Axis after the one-year war. They were led by the formidable and charismatic Hammond Karn, acting as regent for Maneva Lao Zabi, the last surviving Zobi heir. Hammond Karn skillfully manipulated both the AEUG and the Titans, playing them against each other to further her own ambitions of restoring Zeon.
What a mess. How did it end?
It ended in absolute devastation for everyone involved. The war reached this incredibly destructive conclusion that left all three major factions shattered. The Titans, despite their power, were effectively wiped out as an organization. The AEUG, while technically victorious against the Titans, suffered crippling losses, losing many of its key leaders and pilots. And perhaps most tragically, the protagonist, Camille Bidan, after his final, intense psychic battle with the Titans' leader, Paptimus Sirocco, was left mentally incapacitated, his mind broken by the trauma and psychic feedback. A very dark ending.
Wow. So after that level of immense devastation, surely now there would be a lasting peace. You'd really hope so.
You would hope. But the pattern holds. The very next year, UC0088, a new war begins. It's just this relentless, tragic, repeating cycle in the Universal Century faction's fight for freedom, achieve some kind of victory at great cost, only to find new forms of tyranny or new conflicts rising immediately from the ashes.
So who starts the next war?
Immediately following the Grips conflict, with the Federation weakened and the AEUG crippled, Heyman Karn saw her opportunity. Her forces, now formally rebranded as Neo-Zeon, launched their long-planned invasion of the Earth sphere.
The first Neo-Zeon War.
Exactly. The events of the follow-up TV series Mobile Suit Gundam ZZ depict this conflict. With the AEUG's experienced leadership and ace pilots largely gone, the defense of the Earth's sphere falls, rather improbably, to a new, much younger, and initially less serious crew aboard the AEUG battleship Argama. They're led by a brash junk scavenger-turned-pilot named Judo Ashta, who ends up piloting the powerful ZZ Gundam.
How does that series compare to Zeta?
ZZ famously starts with a much lighter, almost comedic tone compared to the darkness of Zeta, which was a bit jarring for some fans at the time. However, the series does darken considerably as the war intensifies, exploring the consequences of the previous conflict and culminating in Heyman Karn's eventual defeat and death.
Was anything else happening around this time?
Yes, running parallel to this major war between the AEUG and Neo-Zeon, there was another significant internal Federation conflict detailed in the photonovel Gundam Sentinel. This involved a contingent of hardline former Titans officers who refused to accept the outcome of the Grips conflict. They seized the Federation asteroid base Pazun and declared themselves the Newtypes, aiming to continue the Titans' ideology.
More rebels.
More rebels. The Federation dispatched its own elite unit, Task Force Alpha, equipped with advanced new mobile suits like the S Gundam to quell this rebellion. This side story is important because it highlights the continued instability within the Federation itself. Even as it faced the massive external threat of Neo-Zeon, it was still plagued by these dangerous internal divisions stemming directly from the Titans' toxic legacy. And after all of that, after decades of near-constant warfare, the One-Year War, Stardust Memory, the Grips conflict, the first Neo-Zeon War, one can't help but ask that fundamental question again. Can this destructive cycle ever truly be broken? Can humanity find a different path?
It seems like the central question of the UC by this point.
It really is, and the next major phase of the Universal Century timeline grapples with this question head-on, bringing back the two most iconic figures of the era for a final confrontation.
Amuro and Char.
Amuro Ray and Char Aznable. 5 years after the first Neo-Zeon War, in UC 0093, Char Aznable, now profoundly disillusioned with humanity's seemingly endless cycle of war and inability to change its destructive ways, resurfaced dramatically. He wasn't trying to reform the Federation anymore. He was leading his own Neo-Zeon movement.
What was his goal this time?
His goal was drastic, apocalyptic even. The events of the blockbuster film Mobile Suit Gundam, Char's counterattack depicts this final cataclysmic conflict. Char, believing that humanity could only truly evolve and achieve peace by being forced off the planet Earth entirely, planned to engineer a mass extinction event, a nuclear winter, by deliberately dropping the massive asteroid fortress Axis onto Earth.
Forcing humanity into space by making Earth uninhabitable? That's extreme.
Utterly extreme. He saw it as a necessary, albeit terrible, reset. The only force capable of standing against him and his powerful Neo-Zeon fleet was the Earth Federation's specialized Lundobel Task Force.
Led by
his old comrades from the One-Year War. Captain Bright Noah, still commanding a ship, and his eternal rival, Amuro Ray, now a seasoned veteran pilot. Amuro pilots the state-of-the-art new Gundam, a mobile suit equipped with a revolutionary new technology called the Psychoframe cockpit.
Psychoframe. What's that?
It's a technology that incorporates microscopic psychic receptors directly into the metal structure of the mobile suit's cockpit and frame. It allows a Newtype pilot's thoughts and intentions to directly interface with the machine, drastically increasing responsiveness and performance. And, as it turns out, it can do much more.
Okay, so how does the conflict resolve?
The war culminates in this desperate, ferocious battle around the asteroid axis as it begins its unstoppable atmospheric descent towards Earth. Amuro in the new Gundam, along with other Lundo Bell pilots and even some defecting Neo-Zeon pilots horrified by Char's plan, desperately attempted to physically push the massive asteroid back into orbit.
Physically push an asteroid.
Physically push it with their mobile suits. It seemed impossible. But then something miraculous, or at least inexplicable, happened. In a phenomenon that came to be known as the Axis shock, the combined psychic will, the focused mental energy of Amuro and countless other pilots pouring out their emotions, amplified exponentially by the psycho-frame material embedded in both Amuro's new Gundam and Char's Sazabi. It caused this brilliant, massive overload of psychic energy.
What did it do?
It created a pushing force, a wave of light that successfully diverted the asteroid, saving Earth from impact. It was this unbelievable event witnessed across the globe.
And Uro and Char.
In the midst of the psychic phenomenon, both Amuro Ray and Char Aznable were declared missing in action, presumed killed. The new Gundam and Sazabi cockpits were recovered empty. It brought their legendary, complex 14-year rivalry to a dramatic, ambiguous, and ultimately tragic end.
Wow. That's a truly iconic moment. A potentially world-ending threat averted by psychic power, essentially. But the story of the UC doesn't just stop there, does it? The Axis shock must have left an incredible impact, but also some profound unanswered questions about the true potential of Newtypes and humanity's future.
Absolutely. The Axis shock was a watershed moment, but it didn't magically fix everything. The peace that followed was, once again, fragile. The Earth Federation, having survived yet another crisis, grew increasingly complacent, bureaucratic, and corrupt over the next few years. Meanwhile, secrets about the very foundation of the Federation and the universal century itself began to fester beneath the surface.
Secrets? What kind of secrets?
This brings us to UC-0096, 3 years after Char's counterattack. The Earth sphere was thrown into turmoil again by the actions of the Vist Foundation, a powerful, shadowy entity deeply connected to the Federation's origins. This is all depicted in the OVA series Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn.
Unicorn. Okay, what did the Vist Foundation do?
The Foundation's dying patriarch, Cardias Vist, decided it was time to reveal something called Laplace's Box. This was believed to be the original, unadulterated copy of the Universal Century Charter, the founding document of the Federation itself. Cardias believed its true contents held the power to reshape humanity's future.
And the key to finding it?
The key to the box was entrusted to a powerful new mobile suit, the RX-0 Unicorn Gundam, equipped with an advanced full-body psycho frame. Through a series of dramatic events, a young civilian student named Banneker Lynx becomes its reluctant pilot.
Another kid pilot.
Another kid caught in the crossfire, yes.
Yeah.
Banneker and the Unicorn Gundam are immediately thrust into a conflict, pursued by a Neo-Zeon remnant faction known as the Sleeves, led by the mysterious masked man, Full Frontal.
Who is?
Essentially, a cyber Newtype clone or genetic recreation of Char Aznable, embodying his political ideals but perhaps not his full essence. The resulting Laplace incident becomes this frantic chase across the Earth sphere for the box.
And what was in Laplace's box? What was the secret?
It was eventually revealed that the original UC Charter contained an additional, crucial clause that had been deliberately erased and covered up by the Federation founders. This hidden clause stated that if humanity evolved into new types, these evolved humans should be given priority in the governance of the Earth Federation.
Whoa. That's huge.
Yeah.
That validates everything Zeon Daikin originally talked about.
Exactly. It acknowledged spacenoid evolution and potential political rights. However, the revelation didn't immediately shatter the Federation as some hoped or feared. Old power structures are hard to dismantle. But the incident culminated in another dramatic event where the Unicorn Gundam's psycho frame, resonating with Banneker's new type abilities, contained a potential nuclear catastrophe from a colony laser, an event publicly witnessed. This solidified the reality and potential power of new types in the public consciousness, even if the political change didn't happen overnight.
Were there other stories around this time?
Yes, concurrent with these events, the short ONA series and novel Mobile Suit Gundam. Twilight AXIS followed a risky mission back to the shattered remains of the asteroid axis, uncovering lingering ambitions and psychoframe technology experiments left behind after Char's rebellion.
And after Unicorn.
1 year later, in UC-0097, the movie Mobile Suit Gundam Narrative, or Gundam NT, takes place. It centers around the reappearance of a third Unicorn Gundam prototype, the Phoenix, which had gone missing years earlier. Both Federation forces and Zeon remnants frantically hunt the rogue Gundam, believing it holds keys to immortality or further mastery over psychoframe technology, leading to more conflict over this powerful, almost mystical tech.
What's truly insightful here, connecting Char's counterattack, unicorn, and narrative, is that the Axis shock in the Laplace's box reveals something profoundly significant is happening with Newtypes. There's this tangible potential for collective understanding, for empathy on a massive scale, amplified by technology. But humanity keeps just missing it, or maybe actively suppressing it, because it would fundamentally change the existing power structures.
That's a perfect summation. Its potential glimpsed, but not grasped. And inevitably, that cycle of conflict, driven by corruption and unresolved tensions, continues to spiral downwards. Fast forward another 8 years to UC 0105.
What's happening then?
By this point, the Earth Federation has become even more entrenched, deeply bureaucratic, and openly corrupt. They're passing laws to forcibly deport undesirable civilians, often the poor, or those deemed politically inconvenient off-Earth and into the colonies using a brutal police force called the Manhunters.
That sounds awful.
It is. This oppressive environment gives rise to a new, sophisticated anti-Federation terrorist organization known simply as MAFTI. They're led by the enigmatic, charismatic figure Mafti Navu-Aaron.
And this is the story of?
This is the story being adapted into the ongoing Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway film trilogy, based on a series of novels from the late 80s. The shocking reveal is that Mafti Navu-Aaron is none other than Hathaway Noah.
Bright Noah's son.
Bright Noah's son, yes. Deeply traumatized by his experiences as a teenager during Char's counterattack and utterly disillusioned with the Federation's corruption, Hathaway now leads this insurgency. Using an incredibly advanced, stolen prototype mobile suit, the G Gundam, MAFTI wages a campaign of targeted assassinations and high-profile attacks against high-level Federation officials.
So a different kind of war now.
Exactly. Hathaway's insurgency represents a significant shift in the nature of conflict within the UC. It moves away from the large-scale military fleet engagements and army clashes of the earlier eras towards a more modern style of asymmetric warfare, terrorism, and espionage, reflecting the changing and increasingly grim and complex political landscape of the Universal Century as it enters its second century.
So as we move even further into the Universal Century timeline, beyond Hathaway, we really start to witness this slow, almost agonizing decline of the Earth Federation. It feels like watching a grand empire slowly crumble from within, losing its grip, creating a power vacuum that others rush into.
That's a very accurate observation. The early second century of a Universal Century, roughly UC 0100 onwards, is really characterized by the steady and seemingly irreversible decline of the Earth Federation's power and influence. Having grown stagnant, deeply corrupt, and militarily weakened by decades of internal conflict and complacency, its authority over the vast Earth sphere begins to seriously crumble. This creates a dangerous power vacuum, and new aggressive factions inevitably emerge to fill it.
So it's less about Zeon now.
Much less about Zeon. This era marks a significant shift away from the familiar Federation versus Zeon conflicts that dominated the first century. We see entirely new wars erupt, driven by different ideologies and ambitions, ultimately leading towards the fragmentation of centralized human governance.
Where does this decline become really apparent?
A major turning point happens about 30 years after Char's counterattack, in UC 0123. The Federation's complacency is abruptly shattered by the sudden emergence of a completely new military power calling themselves the Crossbone Vanguard.
Crossbone Vanguard. Cool name.
Cool name, dangerous force. The events of the 1991 film Mobile Suit Gundam F91 depict their shocking surprise attack on a cluster of peaceful frontier colonies.
Who are they? What do they want?
The Crossbone Vanguard is revealed to be the military arm of the wealthy and aristocratic Rona family. They seek to overthrow what they see as the corrupt, decadent, and inefficient rule of the Earth Federation and establish Cosmo Babylonia, a new aristocratic society ruled by a select, genetically superior elite.
Aristocracy in space. Another ideology clash.
Exactly. The Federation's forces in the frontier region are caught completely off guard by the Crossbone Vanguard's advanced, smaller mobile suits and ruthless tactics. They're easily overwhelmed. The defense of the colonies falls largely to civilians and teenage students, including the protagonist, Seabook Arno, who ends up piloting a new prototype Gundam, the F91, developed secretly not by the Federation military, but by the Civilian Strategic Naval Research Institute, or SNRI.
So even the Federation isn't the only one building Gundams anymore. That seems significant.
Very significant. It shows the decentralization of power and technology.
Does the story continue after F91? The movie felt a bit abrupt.
It did. It was originally planned as a TV series, but the story of F91 is directly continued and greatly expanded upon in the extensive and very popular Mobile Suit Gundam manga series.
Okay, what happens in the manga?
The first Crossbone Gundam manga picks up 10 years after the Cosmo-Babylonia conflict in UC 0133. Seabook Arno, now using the alias Kinkito Now, and Bararona, the heir to the Rona family who rejected their ideals, are now leading a new Crossbone Vanguard space pirates, essentially fighting against the militaristic Jupiter Empire.
The Jupiter Empire? Where'd it come from?
Apparently, the Jovian colonies had been secretly building up their military strength for decades, exploiting their distance from Earth and the Federation's declining influence, with long-term plans to conquer the Earth's sphere using advanced technology and biological weapons.
So the Federation is dealing with Jupiter now, too.
The Federation is barely a factor anymore. The subsequent Crossbone Gundam manga sequels, which span the next several decades of the UC timeline, UC 0130s to UC 0160s, depict a period of escalating chaos. The Earth Federation's authority completely collapses. Without a central power to maintain order, the space colonies begin fighting amongst themselves for resources and dominance. It leads to what the manga calls an age of warring states in space.
Like feudal Japan, but with mobile suits.
Kind of, yeah. Technology even regresses in some areas as interstellar supply chains break down. The Earth sphere plunges into widespread turmoil and fragmentation. It's a dark period.
And this leads into Victory Gundam.
Directly. By UC 0153, the setting for Mobile Suit Victory Gundam, the Earth Federation is a mere shadow of its former self. It's a powerless entity, completely unable to project military force or maintain order even on Earth, let alone in space. In this power vacuum, a new, terrifying force rises to prominence. The fanatical, religiously motivated Zanskar Empire, originating from Side 2.
Zanskar Empire, what are they like?
They are brutal. As depicted in Victory Gundam, the Empire launches the savage invasion of Earth, employing terrifying tactics and weapons like gigantic motorcycle battleships and, most infamously, public executions using giant guillotines to spread fear.
Guillotines. Seriously.
Seriously, it's incredibly grim. The defense of Earth falls not to the Federation military, which is practically non-existent, but to a small, under-equipped civilian resistance group called the League Militaire.
And the pilot.
The series follows the harrowing journey of Uso Iwin, a very young boy, only 13 years old, who becomes the pilot of the League Militaire's secret weapon, the LM-312 VO4 Victory Gundam.
Our team. That's incredibly young, even for Gundam.
It is, and Victory Gundam is widely regarded as one of the darkest, most brutal entries in the entire franchise. It unflinchingly depicts the horrors and randomness of war, with a shockingly high mortality rate for its main and supporting cast, reflecting the truly grim state of the Universal Century at its chronological end, at least in animated form.
Is there anything after Victory Gundam in the UC timeline?
Officially, yes, though it's a bit obscure. The latest chronological point currently depicted in the Universal Century comes from a 2000 Canadian-produced live-action TV movie called G-Savior.
Live-action Gundam, how was that?
Opinions are divided. But canonically, it's set in UC 0223. By this time, the Earth Federation has officially collapsed entirely. It's been succeeded by a new governing body called the Congress of Settlement Nations, or Consent.
Consent, okay.
The plot involves a former Consent military pilot getting caught up in a conflict between Consent forces and a food-starved space colony resistance group over the control of a newly discovered bioluminescent organism that could solve a global food crisis. While it's in official production, it remains a somewhat controversial footnote, but technically it's the current official endpoint of the sprawling Universal Century timeline.
So looking back at this entire later period of the UCF 91 Crossbone Victory G-Savior, it really serves as this stark cautionary tale, doesn't it? It shows that even a unified government, one that started with maybe noble aspirations of taking humanity to the stars, can ultimately stagnate, decay from within, become corrupt, and eventually collapse, leading to fragmentation and a return to smaller, more desperate, brutal conflicts. It's like they failed to learn from centuries of their own history.
It's a deeply pessimistic but arguably realistic portrayal of how power structures can decay and how easily progress can be reversed. The late UC is a warning about complacency and the failure to address root causes of conflict.
All right, so we've navigated the truly epic, often deeply tragic saga of the Universal Century, this sprawling, grand narrative that really is the bedrock, the foundation of all things Gundam. But as we discussed earlier, there's this whole other equally important side to Gundam the Alternate Universes, the AUS. Why did they feel the need to create these entirely separate worlds, these distinct timelines, rather than just continually building onto the already massive UC? What was the driving force?
Yeah, it's a great question. The purpose behind the AUS was really multifaceted. It wasn't just one thing. It stemmed from a desire, starting in the mid-90s, to both expand the franchise's reach and, crucially, provide more creative freedom for the writers and directors.
So reaching new audiences and trying new things?
Exactly. As we touched on, these AUs served as absolutely crucial new entry points. By 1994, when G Gundam came out, you had 15 years of UC history. Trying to jump into that complex web of characters, politics, and events was becoming increasingly daunting for potential new fans, especially internationally.
Right, you needed a way in that didn't require a history lesson.
Precisely. The AUS allowed new audiences to experience the core appeal of Gundam, the cool robots, the human drama, the themes of war and conflict without needing that extensive prior knowledge. This was essential for keeping the franchise fresh, relevant, and accessible to a broader global audience generation after generation.
And the creative freedom aspect.
That was huge, too. Each AU essentially gets to reinterpret those core Gundam themes we keep talking about: war, evolution, technology, human nature, prejudice, but within entirely new settings, with different rules, different technologies, and distinct calendar systems. This allowed the creators to explore compelling what-if scenarios without being constrained by decades of existing UC continuity and established lore. They could take risks, try different genres, focus on different issues.
Let's kick off with one of the most popular and commercially successful AUS, especially in the 2000s. The Cosmic Era, which brought us Gundam Seed and its sequels. This one really seemed to dig into some fascinating and very contemporary moral and ethical questions right from the start.
It absolutely did. Gundam Seed struck a massive chord. The Cosmic Era, or CE, is primarily defined by this deep-seated, violent conflict between two distinct groups of humans. Naturals, who are naturally born humans living mostly on Earth,
Okay.
and coordinators, who are genetically enhanced humans designed before birth for superior physical and mental traits. They predominantly live in advanced orbital space colonies known as plants. This genetic distinction is the absolute core conflict of the era.
So genetic engineering is the main theme.
Right. The backstory establishes that widespread persecution and prejudice from naturals, fueled by fear and jealousy, drove the coordinators to seek refuge in space. There, in the plants, they developed incredibly advanced technology, including mobile suits.
And this led to war.
Tragically, yes. Tensions finally exploded in the year C-70 with the Bloody Valentine tragedy. An Earth Alliance nuclear missile destroyed Junia 7, one of the plant colonies, killing over 243,000 coordinator civilians, including the wife of a key political figure. This horrific event ignited the devastating First Bloody Valentine War between the Earth Alliance Naturals and ZFT, the coordinator's military.
So Gundam Seed starts during this war.
Yes, the main events of Mobile Suit Gundam Seed take place 1 year later in CE-71. The story begins when a young coordinator civilian named Kira Yamato, living peacefully on a neutral space colony, unexpectedly becomes the pilot of a prototype Earth Alliance Gundam, the GAT X-105 Strike Gundam, during a ZFT raid.
Forced into the cockpit, classic Gundam trope.
Classic trope, yeah. And this immediately thrusts him into a brutal conflict that forces him to fight against ZFT, and specifically against his own childhood best friend, a dedicated ZFT soldier named Athrin Zala. The relationship is central to the series.
And the war itself.
The war rapidly escalates throughout Seed, reaching almost genocidal proportions. Both sides develop and attempt to use devastating superweapons: ZIAFT's Genesis Gamma Ray Laser, the Alliance's Cyclops microwave system aimed at annihilating the other's entire population base. It gets incredibly dark.
Are there side stories in the Cosmic Era too?
Oh yes, plenty. The Mobile Suit Gundam Seed Astray manga series, for example, runs parallel to the main show and follows different characters like the junk tech Logue Whale and the mercenary Guy Morikumo piloting their own unique Astray Gundams. It expands the world significantly.
And the main story continued after Seed.
It did. Mobile Suit Gundam Seed Destiny picks up 2 years later in CE-73. It introduces a new main protagonist, Shin Asuka, who lost his family in the previous war. A fragile peace treaty is shattered, and a new conflict, the Second Bloody Valentine War, erupts, partly fueled by manipulation from a shadowy military-industrial complex group called Logos.
Was that the end of the Cosmic Era?
Not quite. There's also a short Onane series called Mobile Suit Gundam Seed, CE-73, Stargazer, which tells a side story during the Second War. And very recently, a brand new sequel film, Mobile Suit Gundam Seed Freedom was released, continuing the story further into the CE timeline. So the cosmic era is still ongoing.
So fundamentally, this timeline really tackles those tricky ethical dilemmas around genetic engineering, the designer-baby debate, and the incredibly deep-seated prejudices and hatreds that can arise from perceived differences in human evolution or ability. It asks tough questions about where the line between natural and engineered should be drawn, and if humanity can even survive such a fundamental divide.
Precisely. It takes classic Gundam themes of prejudice and war and reframes them through that specific lens of genetics, making it feel very relevant.
Okay, now for many listeners, especially in the West, this next one was probably their first real taste of Gundam, the after-colony era of Gundam Wing. It definitely made a huge splash on platforms like Toonami back in the day. It had a different feel, almost like a political thriller sometimes.
It absolutely captivated a huge international audience, yeah. Gundam Wing was a phenomenon. The After Colony, or AC timeline, is primarily centered on the struggle for independence between the various orbital space colonies and an oppressive, globally unified military government called the United Earth Sphere Alliance, which later morphs into the even more insidious secret society known as OZ.
So colonies versus Earth again, but with a different political structure.
Right. The backstory, detailed partly in the Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, Episode 0 manga, shows how the Alliance consolidated power over Earth and the colonies between AC-001 and the 150s, ruling the colonies with an iron fist, suppressing any dissent or moves towards independence.
And the main series starts when?
The main story of New Mobile Report Gundam Wing kicks off dramatically in the year AC-195 with something called Operation Meteor. 5 dissident colonial scientists, each working independently but towards a common goal, send 5 incredibly advanced, unique mobile suits, Gundams made of the near-indestructible Gundanium alloy, down to Earth.
The Gundams arrive.
They arrive. Their mission: to wage a disruptive guerrilla war against the Alliance and its powerful military arm, OZ, striking strategic targets and undermining their control.
And the 5 pilots became iconic.
Absolutely iconic. Hiro Yui, Duo Maxwell, Tyrell Barton, Quattro Roberba Winner, and Chang Wu-fei, each with their own distinct personality, motivations, and incredibly powerful Gundam. Initially, they often work alone, sometimes even clashing with each other, sowing chaos and disrupting OZ's complex plans for total global domination.
How does the conflict evolve?
The series follows their intertwined paths as they gradually dismantle the corrupt Earth Sphere Alliance, then find themselves fighting against the manipulative leadership of OZ, and eventually they have to confront the militaristic White Fang Rebellion, a colonial faction that seeks to escalate the war to a catastrophic conclusion, threatening Earth itself.
Does it end there?
Not quite. The story finds its definitive conclusion 1 year later, in AC-196, with the OVA and later compiled film New Mobile Report Gundam Wing, Endless Waltz. A new threat emerges, the Maya army, led by the supposed daughter of a former dictator, aiming to restart the cycle of conflict. This forces the now pacifist Gundam pilots to reluctantly retrieve their Gundams and fight one last, decisive battle to secure the hard-won peace.
Is there anything beyond Endless Waltz?
There is a sequel novel series called Frozen Teardrops set decades later in a new Mars Century calendar, but Endless Waltz is generally considered the main conclusion to the core Gundam Wing saga.
So looking at Gundam Wing, the thematic focus really seems to shift, doesn't it? It feels like it leans more into the morality of pacifism versus armed intervention, the idea of necessary evils, and it definitely puts a spotlight on the heavy psychological burden placed on these very young pilots, essentially child soldiers, forced into these political conflicts. Themes explored through that lens of a sophisticated political thriller, constantly asking whether violence can ever truly bring lasting peace or if it just perpetuates a cycle.
Perfectly put. It takes the core Gundam ingredients and gives them that distinct political thriller, almost espionage, flavor, focusing heavily on the pilot's internal struggles and the complex web of alliances and betrayals.
Okay, this next one is really unique in its setup because, as you mentioned earlier, it's set in our calendar, in our plausible future. The Anno Domini era of Gundam 00 brings the conflict almost literally home, exploring how global politics, resource scarcity, and technological disparity could escalate in the centuries ahead.
That's definitely its key distinguishing feature, yeah. The Anno Domini, or AD timeline, is unique in that it's explicitly set in a future version of our real-world Gregorian calendar. It feels more directly connected to our present day.
What's the backstory? How does the world get to the state we see in the show?
The backstory, laid out in the show's opening, begins in the late 21st century. Humanity has finally depleted most of Earth's fossil fuels, plunging the world into decades of widespread, brutal resource wars fought over the remaining scraps of energy. Constant conflict, instability. Pretty bleak picture.
How is it resolved? Or is it?
A technological solution emerges, but it doesn't fix the politics. Humanity manages to construct 3 massive orbital elevators, colossal structures reaching from the Earth's surface into geosynchronous orbit, each equipped with vast solar power generation systems. These elevators provide a near-limitless supply of clean energy.
So, energy crisis solved.
For some, the elevators and the energy distribution networks are controlled by 3 major geopolitical power blocks that formed around them. The Union, centered on North America, the Human Reform League, centered on Asia, and the AEU, Advanced European Union. While this system provides essential energy to the member states, critically, it fails to end global conflict. Nations left outside these blocks continue to suffer from poverty, energy shortages, and proxy wars fueled by the major powers. So peace is unevenly distributed.
And that's the world Gundam 00 starts in.
Exactly. The main story begins in the year AD 2307 with the first season of Mobile Suit Gundam 00. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a mysterious high-tech private military organization calling itself Celestial Being appears on the world stage.
Celestial being, what's their goal?
Their stated goal is radical and unprecedented: to eradicate all warfare from the face of the Earth through direct, overwhelming armed intervention.
Peace through superior firepower.
Essentially, yes. Wielding 4 incredibly advanced, almost alien-looking mobile suits called Gundams, powered by unique semi-perpetual energy sources called GN drives, Celestial Beings pilots, known as the Gundam Meisters, begin systematically attacking military forces and disrupting conflicts across the globe regardless of affiliation.
Who are the Meisters?
The initial 4 are Setsuna FC, Lock-on Stratos, Alleluia Haptism, and Tierra Erde. Each pilot's a specialized Gundam. Their controversial, disruptive actions inevitably force the 3 previously divided and competing power blocks to reluctantly unite against this common, powerful enemy. Season 1 ends with a massive battle against the united world forces.
Does the story continue?
Yes, the second season picks up 4 years later, in AD 2312. The world has unified, at least politically, into the Earth Sphere Federation. But this fragile peace is maintained by an autonomous and increasingly oppressive internal security force called the A-Laws, who ruthlessly crush any dissent. Celestial Being, having survived the previous battle, reunites to fight against the tyranny of the A-Laws and a new threat: the Innovators.
Innovators. Like Newtypes?
Similar concept, yeah. Genetically engineered humans, artificially created, who believe they are destined to lead humanity into the future, manipulating events from behind the scenes. Season 2 deals with dismantling the A-Laws and confronting the Innovators' plan.
And is there a conclusion after Season 2?
Yes, the story finds its ultimate and quite surprising conclusion in the feature film Mobile Suit Gundam 00, the movie Awakening of the Trailblazer, set 2 years later in AD 2314. Here, humanity faces its first contact with a truly alien intelligence.
Aliens in Gundam, that's rare.
Extremely rare. They encounter the ELS, which stands for Extraterrestrial Living Metal Shapeshifters. They're this techno-organic, hive-mind race that communicates through assimilation, absorbing technology, and even living beings, which humanity initially perceives as pure aggression.
So, a war against aliens.
It starts that way, but it becomes something more. This unprecedented conflict forces Celestial Being into one final desperate battle, not just to save humanity from assimilation, but ultimately to try and achieve true mutual understanding with this completely alien species, using the unique properties of the Gundams and Setsuna's evolving abilities as a true innovator.
Wow. So Gundam 00 really digs into that controversial idea of achieving peace through force, questioning if the ends justify the means. And then it pushes beyond typical Gundam themes to explore the ultimate challenge of communication and understanding, not just between humans, but with truly alien life. It expands the boundaries of what understanding can mean for humanity, asking if we're capable of connecting with something utterly different.
Absolutely. It takes the Gundam framework and pushes it into new territory, exploring interventionism, global politics, transhumanism, and ultimately first contact, making it a really unique entry in the franchise.
And believe it or not, there are even more alternate universes, each with its own incredible, distinct twist. It's honestly astonishing how many different ways they can take the same basic ingredients, giant robots, human drama, conflict, and remix them into something fresh.
The sheer diversity is truly a testament to the franchise's adaptability and creative longevity. Each AU offers a unique flavor.
Right, like take the Future Century FC of Mobile Fighter G Gundam. We mentioned it earlier, it completely throws out the traditional war narrative. Instead, international disputes between space colonies are settled every 4 years by the Gundam fight, basically a global martial arts tournament using highly specialized mobile suits representing each nation.
Yeah, it's like a super robot martial arts action movie following Damen Kashu representing Neo-Japan as he fights other Gundam fighters while searching for his brother and the mysterious Devil Gundam. Very different vibe, very hot-blooded.
Totally different. Then there's the Afterwar, AW, timeline of Afterwar Gundam X. This one paints a really bleak, post-apocalyptic picture. It's set 15 years after a catastrophic war where colony drops wiped out most of Earth's population.
A much more somber tone. It follows a young scavenger boy named Garrod Ran who stumbles upon the powerful Gundam X and ends up protecting a mysterious girl who is one of the few surviving Newtypes in this devastated world. It really asks, what happens after the apocalypse? How does humanity rebuild, find hope, and what role do Newtypes play in a world that fears their power?
Then you jump to the post-disaster PD era of Mobile Suit Gundam, Iron-Blooded Orphans. This one feels very gritty, almost grounded in a strange way. It's set 300 years after a devastating conflict called the Calamity War destroyed much of civilization.
Iron-Blooded Orphans offers this really raw, almost feudal perspective. It focuses on a group of exploited child soldiers working for a private military company on Mars, the Tekadon Group, who rebel and fight for their independence and a better future. It follows Mikazuki August, the stoic pilot of the ancient Gundam Barbatos, very focused on themes of found family, exploitation, the brutality of child soldiery, and the physical cost of piloting advanced machines through its Alaya Vijnana system.
Right, that human-machine interface had serious consequences. And then there's the advanced generation AG of Mobile Suit Gundam, AGE. That one had a really ambitious structure.
It did. AGE tells a century-long war spanning 3 distinct generations of the Asuno family Flit, Asimu, and Kyo as they fight against a mysterious, seemingly alien force called the Unknown Enemy, later revealed to be humans who migrated to Mars. It explores how war impacts different generations, how grudges are passed down, and how perspectives on conflict change over a lifetime. Each generation had its own Gundam, evolved using the AG system.
And finally, the most recent AU sensation, the Ad Stella AS timeline of Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury. This one brought a whole new audience to Gundam.
Absolutely, huge success. Witch from Mercury presents this fascinating corporate-controlled future where powerful conglomerates essentially run the solar system, and major business disputes are settled through formalized mobile suit duels at the Astacasia School of Technology.
So corporate intrigue and school drama with Gundams.
Kind of, yeah. It follows Soletta Mercury, a shy transfer student from Mars, and her incredibly advanced, almost sentient mobile suit, the Gundam Ariel. She gets swept up in corporate politics, duels, and the dangerous taboo surrounding the GUND format, or Gundam technology, a human-machine interface designed to enhance pilot performance, but with potentially lethal physiological risks if pushed too far. It delves into themes of corporate ethics, AI rights, found family, identity, and the human cost of technological progress.
It's truly remarkable how they take these core ideas, conflict, technology, humanity's future, and just spin them into completely different genres and thematic explorations, from martial arts tournaments and post-apocalyptic survival to gritty crime stories and corporate thrillers, yet they all still feel distinctly Gundam at their heart. They keep asking new questions without ever losing the franchise's core identity.
Okay, so we've explored the vast universal century, and we've dipped into the incredible variety of the alternate universes. Now, what if I told you there's a concept within Gundam itself that suggests all of these disparate timelines, all these different series we've just discussed, UC, AC, FC, AEW, maybe even CE and others, aren't actually separate realities, but are somehow connected, not just thematically, but chronologically.
Connected? How could they possibly be connected chronologically? They have totally different histories, different calendars.
Exactly. It sounds impossible, right?
Yeah.
But this is where the series Turn a Gundam comes in. And it introduces this absolutely fascinating meta-narrative concept that philosophically and potentially chronologically unifies the entire Gundam franchise.
Turn a Gundam. That was the one for the 20th anniversary, right? With the mustache.
That's the one. Directed by the original creator, Yoshiyuki Tomino himself. Turn a Gundam posits that the disparate histories we've seen the Universal Century and all the various AUs that existed up to that point are not parallel worlds at all. Instead, they are sequential epochs, distinct eras, in a single, incredibly vast, and largely forgotten timeline of human history.
So, like ancient history chapters.
Kind of, yeah, forgotten chapters. Turn a Gundam itself is set thousands upon thousands of years in a distant future, specifically in the year CC 2345. That's correct century 2345.
Correct century. Okay. What's the world like then?
On Earth, civilization has regressed dramatically. Technology is roughly equivalent to our early 20th century biplanes, early automobiles. They've lost almost all knowledge of their incredibly advanced spacefaring past. Meanwhile, a technologically advanced society of humans, known as the Moon Race, has been living peacefully on the moon for millennia.
Humans on the moon, Earth regressed.
Got it. The series begins when the Moon Race initiates a plan to return to Earth, seeing it as their ancestral homeland. This inevitably leads to conflict between their advanced mobile suits and Earth's much more primitive industrial age technologies.
How does the connection to past Gundam series come into play?
The central revelation of the series, the key to understanding this connection, comes from the discovery of something called the Dark History, or Kuro Rikishi in Japanese. It's this comprehensive, almost mythical archive of humanity's entire past, stored digitally on the moon.
An archive of everything.
Everything. And as characters access this dark history, it reveals a shocking truth. Humanity has risen to create incredibly advanced spacefaring civilizations, developed mobile suits, fought devastating wars, and then tragically destroyed itself in apocalyptic conflicts multiple times in a repeating cycle throughout history.
Multiple times.
Yes, and crucially, the visual records contained within this dark history explicitly show footage, images, and mobile suits from past Gundam series. It clearly shows events from the Universal Century, but also unmistakable glimpses of the future century of G Gundam, the after-colony era of Gundam Wing, and the after-war era of Gundam X. Later supplementary materials and statements have even explicitly included the Cosmic Era and potentially others within this vast timeline.
Okay, hold on. This next point is truly fascinating, then. All those separate stories you've just heard about, Gundam Wing, G Gundam, the entire UC saga, they're all effectively chapters in one giant repeating book of humanity's forgotten past. It's not just a multiverse of parallel worlds, it's a multi-era history, all converging into this single grand cyclical narrative.
Exactly. That's the mind-bending implication of the dark history concept. It reframes everything that came before it.
So what made this cycle of destruction so pervasive? And how was it eventually broken, leading to the relatively peaceful, low-tech, correct century? Was there a final, ultimate conflict?
Yes. The dark history reveals that this cycle of technological advancement, devastating war, and societal collapse repeated itself over and over. And what ultimately ended the last great war of that forgotten past, the war that immediately preceded the long millennia leading to the correct century, was the activation and use of the titular mobile suit of the series, the WD-M01 Turn a Gundam.
The Turn a Gundam itself, what made it so special?
This mysterious, ancient mobile suit, which is excavated on Earth during the series, possesses a truly civilization-ending power, a weapon called the Moonlight Butterfly.
Moonlight Butterfly. Sounds poetic.
Poetic and terrifying. It's not just a powerful laser or a massive bomb. It's described as a swarm of self-replicating nanomachines released from the Turn a Gundam's back. These nanomachines are capable of disintegrating all artificial technology, metals, plastics, circuits, everything man-made, turning it into silicate dust on a planetary scale.
Wipes the slate clean. Literally.
Literally. The dark history reveals that the Moonlight Butterfly was used globally to end the final, most destructive war of that forgotten past. It effectively destroyed all advanced technology on Earth and in near-Earth base, forcing human civilization to completely reset, leading to the loss of historical records and the regression seen in the correct century.
So this isn't just a superweapon, it's almost a symbolic act. A forced, planetary-scale technological disarmament. A hard reboot for humanity.
Precisely. It gave humanity a chance to start fresh, albeit stripped of its accumulated knowledge and technological power, almost like a planetary-scale memory wipe designed to prevent immediate self-destruction and break the cycle, at least for a very long time.
And just to add another potential layer to this incredibly complex cosmic tapestry, the Re-Killed Sentry from Recon Disgusta in G also fits into this grand narrative somehow, right? Even though it came out much later.
Indeed it does, though its exact placement is a point of some discussion. Gundam Recon Disgusta in G, also created by Tomino, adds another fascinating layer to this potential meta-narrative.
What's its setting like?
The series is set in the year RC 1014, that's Reguild Century 1014. In this era, humanity on Earth has achieved a period of relative peace, but relies heavily on energy supplied from space via a massive ancient space elevator called the Capitol Tower. Critically, knowledge of past eras, particularly regarding advanced technology and warfare, the lost centuries, is highly regulated, almost suppressed by the dominant religion ideology.
So where does it fit relative to Turn A?
This is where it gets slightly tricky. The series creator, Yoshiyuki Tomino, has stated in interviews that he personally views the Reguild Century as taking place about 500 years after the end of the correct century depicted in Turn A Gundam. So in his mind, it's a future era.
Okay.
However, official production materials, guidebooks, and some merchandise associated with Reconquista in G generally place the Reguild Century calendar between the end of the Universal Century and the beginning of the correct century.
So before Turn A.
Under that more common official placement, yes, the Reguild Century becomes another lost epoch, another forgotten chapter of advanced civilization and conflict that rose, and presumably fell, contained within the vast timeline encompassed by the Dark History, before the final reset by the Moonlight Butterfly and the dawn of the correct century. It adds yet another potential cycle to that grand pattern.
Wow. So after all of this, thinking about the Universal Century, the AUS, Turn A, the Dark History, maybe even Reconquista,
Yeah.
what does this broader picture ultimately mean for our understanding of Gundam as a whole? It's clearly evolved far beyond just being a collection of war stories, hasn't it? It's something much, much grander in scope.
Absolutely. The profound insight here, the big takeaway from the Dark History concept, is that it completely reframes the entire Gundam meta series. It suggests that the complete lore, if you will, isn't merely a collection of separate, unconnected stories about giant robots. Instead, it presents Gundam as a single, overarching, almost mythological cycle.
Cycle of what?
A cycle of human behavior played out on a cosmic scale across millennia. Each timeline, regardless of its specific setting, characters, or calendar system, explores a remarkably consistent, recurring pattern. Humanity consistently expands into space, driven by hope or necessity. It develops incredibly powerful, often double-edged, technologies epitomized by the very Gundams that define the franchise. And then repeatedly, inevitably it seems, humanity engages in devastating conflicts. Conflicts born of greed, ideology, prejudice, misunderstandings, pushing itself time and again to the very brink of self-annihilation.
And the Newtypes, coordinators, innovators.
They fit into this cycle too. The recurring emergence of these evolved humans, Newtypes in UC and AEW, coordinators in CE, innovators in AD, maybe others, represents this persistent, flickering hope within the cycle, a hope for a new stage of human understanding, enhanced empathy, maybe even collective consciousness that could break the pattern of conflict. But almost always, this potential is tragically crushed, co-opted, or overwhelmed by the weight of old hatreds, ingrained conflicts, and humanity's persistent flaws.
So from this perspective, the entire Gundam franchise becomes what?
It becomes this profound, multi-generational, multi-timeline cautionary tale. It chronicles humanity's seemingly endless, cyclical journey of technological progress and moral self-destruction, of reaching for the stars only to bring our terrestrial wars, our prejudices, our failings right along with us. The Dark History is the ultimate, stark expression of this theme, revealing that within this narrative framework, every victory is temporary, every peace is fragile, and humanity, left entirely to its own devices, appears almost destined to repeat its catastrophic mistakes across millennia.
But is there any hope in that?
Well, Turn A Gundam itself, the series that reveals this bleak cycle, also serves as the philosophical capstone. It's a story not just about one particular war, but about the potential end of war itself, achieved through catastrophic reset, yes, but also through understanding and connection on a personal level between the characters. It offers that faint, persistent hope, embodied by characters like Loran Seahak, the Turn A pilot, that humanity might one day finally learn from its past and break the cycle for good, escaping its own self-inflicted dark history.
It's like looking into this vast cosmic mirror and seeing our own tendencies, our own potential for both creation and destruction reflected back at us over and over across millennia. It transforms Gundam into this grand, epic narrative about the human condition itself and that persistent, often painful struggle for peace and understanding in a universe we keep trying to conquer or escape. Outro. And wow, there you have it. A pretty comprehensive chronological deep dive into the incredible, sprawling, and surprisingly interconnected universe of Gundam.
We covered a lot. From the very birth of the Universal Century, through all of those diverse alternate universes, right up to the unifying, mind-bending revelation of the dark history.
We definitely covered a remarkable amount of ground.
Mhm.
Hopefully, we've helped connect some of those intriguing dots you might have wondered about if you've encountered different Gundam series over the years.
Yeah, our mission really was to try and provide you with a clearer understanding of how this whole meta series is structured, why its approach to canon is so unique and flexible, and maybe most importantly, the profound recurring themes about war, humanity, evolution, prejudice that it explores across all its diverse timelines.
It really is a masterclass in long-form, multi-generational storytelling, isn't it? Continuously evolving and challenging its audience, even after all these decades.
Absolutely. It never stops asking difficult questions.
So what's the key takeaway for you, the listener, after all this? Well, first, it means you can basically jump into almost any Gundam series and find a compelling story packed with amazing mecha action, but also usually some pretty deep philosophical questions to chew on.
Definitely. Pick one that looks interesting and go for it.
But now, hopefully, you also have a better understanding of how they can all fit together, how they contribute to this grand, epic narrative of humanity's struggles, failures, and aspirations out there among the stars. And maybe how these stories, in their own way, reflect something deeper about ourselves and our own history.
And perhaps thinking about this cyclical nature of conflict and peace we've discussed, this repeated pattern of rise and fall, of progress and self-destruction across the vast timeline of the dark history, it leaves you with a final thought to ponder.
Go on.
Does seeing this pattern laid out so starkly make the ultimate fate of humanity seem sort of inevitable? A predefined path of destruction and rebirth that we're doomed to follow? Or does it maybe offer a persistent, if perhaps faint, hope? A hope that one day, understanding this cycle, recognizing these patterns within ourselves, might be the key to truly breaking it. A hope that we might finally learn from these millennia of fictional struggle.
That is definitely a question that resonates far beyond fictional universes filled with giant robots. A powerful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Gundam multiverse.
It's been fascinating to unpack.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and stay well informed.